Now it's time for one of the highlights of Brainstorm Green, an annual ritual, our signature event, our trademark, a rite of spring. I'm talking, of course, about great green ideas. Those of you who have been here before know what this is about. We have searched far and wide to find what we think are 5 of the best great green ideas and companies out there. We've brought them here to stage what is essentially going to be a combination of American Idol meets your most nerve-wracking startup pitch ever. So here's how it works. We have 5 entrepreneurs. Each of them will have 5 minutes to present their case. Where are the entrepreneurs? OK, here you are. Going over your allotted time will count against you. This year, at the end of 5 minutes, we have this loud, obnoxious buzzer. It'll disrupt your thought. It'll disrupt the audience. It'll disrupt the judges. Avoid the buzzer. Respect the buzzer. I'm a nice person. I'm not afraid of jumping in and stopping you at 5 minutes, and nobody wants to end a pitch mid-sentence. At the end, each presentation will be followed by 1 to 2 minutes of questions from our esteemed judges, who will enter in a minute. At the end of the 5 presentations, each of you will get to vote using your cell phones to text for the company that you think will be the most successful. Lots at stake here. The fate of these 5 startups is in your hands. Without further ado, the winner will receive an amazing Panasonic camera. And the victory of glory, the glory of victory. Without further ado, let me introduce our judges. We have Samir Kaul, General Partner of Khosla Ventures. And and joining Samir is Dhiraj Malkani, Partner of RockPort Capital Partners. Have a seat. And I should say that Dhiraj is one of 3 people here who's been at every single Brainstorm Green. So thank you for your time and your talents, both of you. Without further ado, let me bring up our first presenting entrepreneur. Let's welcome Priyanka Bakaya, CEO and founder of PK Clean.
Today, I'm going to tell you about a major environmental opportunity that is all around us: plastic.
Plastic waste is mounting everywhere. An estimated 2 trillion tons is sitting in US landfills, and the amount of plastic waste is growing globally by 8% each year. While metal and paper recycling rates have grown over the decades, plastic recycling has stayed the same at today's rate of only 7%. Most of the rest of this plastic waste gets landfilled. Plastic is the worst type of waste to bury because it never decomposes. The environmental cost of burying plastic and transporting it hundreds of miles is enormous. Beyond the ecological devastation, the cost of paying to transport the waste and landfill it is also in the billions. PK Clean has the solution. Since all plastic comes from oil, PK Clean converts the plastic back to oil. PK Clean reduces the long carbon chains in plastic to oil by using a proprietary catalyst that speeds the reaction, lowers the reaction temperature, and improves the yield. First, PK Clean shreds the mixed dirty landfill-bound plastic waste and next feeds it into its continuous reactor along with its proprietary catalyst. It takes 15 minutes for the reaction to occur. 70 to 80% is recovered as diesel fuel, and the remaining 10 to 20% is recovered as natural gas, which is recycled to heat the system. The process produces so much more energy than it requires that it has an energy payback ratio of 15 to 1. PK Clean builds everything itself. Its first commercial-scale plant cost only $100,000. The new plant has taken a quantum leap over any other waste-to-energy system. The breakthrough design is completely continuous, ensuring energy efficiency. It is customizable by fuel, producing diesel, crude oil, or gasoline, and it is compact at only 300 square feet. Priyanka Bakaya, founder of PK Clean, has always been passionate about green energy. At Stanford, she taught classes on the environment, and after graduation became an energy analyst. That same year, oil prices doubled, leading her to research the energy technologies of late Australian inventor Percy Keane, who had developed the catalyst. She applied to MIT to continue his work. Meanwhile, Benjamin Coates, after graduating with a double engineering degree from UC Berkeley, had been building waste-to-energy systems. As a child, Ben had a passion for building things. After Coates finished his PhD coursework and Bakaya hers at MIT, the two crossed paths in Palo Alto and realized that with his design experience and her catalyst experience together, they could transform plastic waste forever. Through the Lightfoot Ventures Fellowship Program, they started designing and testing prototypes. After years of testing and scale-up, their 5th-generation system in Utah converts 20,000 pounds of plastic per day into 2,500 gallons of oil. Locally, PK Clean is collecting unwanted plastic waste from Utah's largest recycling company, as well as major corporations. In addition to MOUs from plastic waste suppliers, PK Clean also has an MOU from one of the many refineries in Salt Lake City to buy its oil. The opportunity is huge. If all domestic non-recycled plastic waste was converted into oil, we'd get over 10 billion gallons. Waste is a terrible thing to waste, so come join us and help us end plastic waste forever.
PK Clean transforms the most painful form of waste into the most useful form of energy. Our vision is to turn landfill plastics into a $20 billion annual oil market. Our first target are MRFs, or material recovery facilities, which represent a $1 billion opportunity. For our recycling customers, PK Clean transforms their waste disposal fees from an average cost of $50 per ton to a revenue of up to $600 per ton. Ever since we were founded at MIT 3 years ago, PK Clean's patented catalytic depolymerization process has been successfully demonstrated across several pilots, and we have now completed construction of our first commercial-scale 10-ton per day plant in Salt Lake City. For this plant, we are using plastic waste from Utah's largest recycling company, Rocky Mountain Recycling, who is our first target customer. Once we have demonstrated this plant for Rocky Mountain Recycling, PK Clean plans to sell plants to recyclers and corporations across the country. It costs us $25 to $30 per barrel to produce diesel, and our first plant cost only $100,000 to build. With a payback period of under a year and a footprint of only 300 square feet, major recycling customers are already interested. So come join us in our mission of converting mountains of trash into barrels of oil. Thank you.
Thank you. Well timed. Good job on the time. Question, Samir, why don't we start with you?
So what's the quality of the fuel, and how much has it been tested by some of the large oil companies?
Sure. So we're producing a diesel fuel. So we get 70 to 80% yield of the product is oil, and about 50% of that we can make diesel fuel, and the rest we can either make fuel based on what their requirements are at the recycling companies. If they want gasoline, a certain cut, we can make that, or we can just sell it as crude oil. And in terms of testing, we've done extensive testing from all our pilots so far. So that testing has occurred at oil refineries and at the University of Utah, which is located near to our plant. And in Utah, we have a MOU from a local refinery in Salt Lake City who has accepted our oil and tested it.
Great. Dhiraj, question for you?
It's a great idea. Liquid gold is the holy grail. My question is, you're showing a 70x return on invested capital. That's better than any other investment opportunity out there. Why haven't you been able to raise all this capital yet?
So the proof is in the pudding, and we want to first show that we can do this commercially for a recycling plant before we put our names on it and sell it across the country. So we believe in building a product and selling it rather than going and raising lots of money and with an idea in your head. So that's our philosophy. We want to make sure it works for this recycling company. If they're happy, then other recyclers across the country will see it. Other corporations with a lot of plastic waste will see it, and we want to show that it works.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
Next up, we have Ethan Brown, founder and CEO. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Priyanka. Next up, we have Ethan Brown, founder and CEO of Beyond Meat.
Great, thanks. So I wanted to just give a real quick disclaimer. So we've closed our Series C round, but I agreed to do this because I wanted to talk to all you guys and get an opportunity to be up here on the stage. So happy to receive your votes and hope I'll win, but that's the context in which I'm giving the talk. And so some of the information that you'd normally see in a deck, I've kept out of ours just because out of fairness to the investors that have just come in. Okay, so a little bit about my background and why I got into Beyond Meat and why I founded the company. The company is organized around plant-based protein and realigning the protein structure in plant material so that it mimics the protein structure you find in animal protein, animal muscle, or meat. The reason that I wanted to do this was I began to think a lot about the impact of animal agriculture and livestock on a lot of different things that I cared about, as a child. My father's a professor at the University of Maryland when I was growing up. We had a farm about 2.5 hours outside town that I spent an enormous amount of time at as a child. My dad being entrepreneurial, he started a dairy operation there. We had about 100 head of Holstein cattle. And so from an early age, I was able to see and understand the resource use that went into, particularly in this area, milk production, whether it was the grain in the silos, the water we used, et cetera. But I also, probably more on an emotional level, connected with the difference between the fate of the animals in our barn and the fate of the animals in our house. And as a little kid, that sort of stuck with me and never made sense to me. It still doesn't today. I pulled for Wilbur and Charlotte's Web, and I still do. But somehow that, sort of that comes out of you as you get older. But for me, it never really left me. But it wasn't serious enough to get into as a field, sort of animal protection and things of that nature. I was, from an academic family, and that's not the kind of thing you did. So I got into the energy sector and did well there. I worked for Ballard Power Systems for a very long time, reported directly to the president and CEO, John Sheridan, who's a terrific guy. But this thing kept calling me, and I would go to conferences like this, and we'd argue about whether lithium-ion batteries or fuel cells, if you put another $1 billion into either of those technologies, which one would turn the greatest round-trip efficiency, et cetera. And I was interested in it, but I still had this calling. And so I started to think about all the different reasons that I might make a career transition. And I want to just go through these. They're very simple, but I think impactful. So the first slide is just a number. It's 3 out of 10. So 3 out of the 10 top disease epidemics we have here in the US are related to animal protein consumption. I'll let folks argue about what the actual correlation is between them, but it's pretty well established now. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Each of those has a link to the consumption of animal protein. 51% of greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to the raising of livestock for food. Now that's a number that's been debated as well, but Robert Goodwin, who's a very respected economist toward the World Bank, is the one that did this study. It's not coming from Sierra Club, it's not coming from PETA. The World Bank is not necessarily a left-leaning organization. But he looked at the UN's numbers and said, listen, it's more like 51%. So whether you believe it's 20% or 51%, it's a significant contributor to climate change. 15. So our process, which takes protein directly from plants, runs it through a heating, cooling, and pressure proprietary process, uses about 15 times less water than a poultry operation. And the statistics are the same for feed. It's about 7 times less feed for energy, et cetera. There's just tremendous efficiencies in our system versus animal protein. 66 billion animals are raised every year, sentient beings that are confined, largely confined, and destroyed on an annual basis to support animal protein consumption. Some people think it's okay, some don't. I'll leave it to you guys to decide which. But here's an interesting statistic, and here's a point I think that helped raise a lot of money for this business. $177 billion a year are spent on animal protein, on meat. And that number is declining 1% a year. So consumers are making adjustments in the proteins that they're consuming. And when you're taking 1% off of a $177 billion market, domestic market, that's a big, big opportunity. It has to go somewhere. Protein consumption has to go somewhere. That's driven by 90 million people that are flexitarians, folks that on a weekly basis try to avoid 1 or so meals a week. So we've captured that, and we've said we're going to create the best product on the market, and I think we did. The New York Times food critic Mark Bittman, he couldn't tell me the difference between our chicken and real chicken. The list goes on there. We launched with 3 SKUs. We saw 50% growth this quarter over last, Q1 over Q4. This month we just wrapped up. I looked at the numbers. I was sending an email out this morning. We had 30% growth this month over last, and these are on real numbers. These aren't on small numbers. So our business is going to be a $1 billion business, and we're well on our way.
That's another number, 5 minutes. Thank you, Ethan. Yeah. Dhiraj, let's start with you this time.
It's a great presentation. It's the first time I've actually witnessed a slide deck with only numbers on it.
Thank you. For a very touchy-feely subject.
I love it. I love it. What's your favorite band?
My favorite band, the Rolling Stones.
I can sense that from the numbers there.
Yeah. I was going to ask which one of you guys is Blake Shelton.
Exactly.
Shakira?
Okay.
Samir.
I don't know how to top Dhiraj's question. It was such a, it was such a good one.
Thank you, sir. It's called a softball.
What's the What beyond just the chicken dishes are you going to do?
Sure. So beef, we're deep into beef, and I said to Smithfield yesterday, I'd like to work with you guys. I'd like to work with Pat Brown. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see whether we can work together. I love Pat. I love what he's doing. Yeah, we have a beef product that's out of this world, and that's coming up next.
Great.
I have a question. Why not just get people to eat less meat?
Right. Okay. So great question. I get that asked all the time. Like, why are you about fake meat? What's the deal? That doesn't make sense. I got a 7 and 8 year old kid, and I made this offer yesterday. I will pay anyone in this room $100 if you can get my child to eat quinoa and kale while his buddies are eating chicken McNuggets. It's just not going to happen. My son's not going to be the guy after the soccer game in the corner with broccoli and fake cheese at McDonald's. So we're about replacing the food that people eat with plant protein. We're not trying to make too many changes. I always say you can't serve too many masters. That's what our company's about. We're going to replace the products that people are eating with plant-based versions of the protein they're eating.
Great. Let's give it up for Ethan. Thank you so much. Ethan can still, by the way, win a camera. So just because you raise some rounds around doesn't disqualify you here. Let's please now welcome Paul Lightfoot, the CEO of BrightFarms. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Dhiraj. How are you? Thank you so much. We are all here as leaders to solve problems, and I'm here to talk about an unsustainable supermarket supply chain. I want to start by asking all of you to raise your hand if you're based here in California. Quite a few, I imagine. Okay, put your hands down. This actually isn't about you. You're blessed with a great food supply. For those of us beyond the West Coast, raise your hand if you love your supermarket's tomatoes. Literally zero, and I'm not surprised. You see, the problem is your U.S. supermarket tomatoes and your lettuces are subject to a long and complex supply chain that's actually making the products worse. Most U.S. supermarket tomatoes you see come from Canada and Mexico, and nearly all U.S. supermarket lettuces, at least on a year-round basis, are coming from Arizona and California. This supply chain consumes tremendous amounts of natural and financial resources. It's entirely dependent on low-cost fossil fuels. This supply chain is temporarily affordable, but it's not sustainable. And making this system more efficient, making its parts better, won't solve these problems. This is a system that requires disruption. So why not just grow produce in a responsible manner where the food is consumed? Demand for local food, I'm sure you know, is soaring. People want to know where their food is coming from. They want it to be fresher, better for their communities. But to be commercially meaningful, in my opinion, local and sustainable food needed a new business model. And that's what we're doing. BrightFarms' solution is to grow produce in the same communities, indeed, where it's being consumed in a way that's better for the business of supermarkets and better for the environment. I don't want to choose between business and environment. Instead, I want to choose market segments where there's an alignment between better business and better environment. To do that, we've borrowed a business model from the energy industry. PPA, you might have heard of, used to stand for Power Purchase Agreement. Well, today it stands for Produce Purchase Agreement as well. And here's how it works for us. We sign a long-term contract with a supermarket client that fixes the prices we get for our products, has minimum volume commitments on an annual and a monthly basis, essentially guaranteeing the revenue for our greenhouse farm projects. We use these contracts to attract the finance to build these projects. We then operate them on behalf of our supermarket clients to deliver locally to them within hours of harvesting perfectly ripe lettuces and tomatoes. Importantly, really importantly, we don't ask the supermarket to invest any money up front. They merely commit to a long-term agreement to buy produce that is demonstrably fresher, more delicious, more delightful for their customers. And because it has a shorter supply chain, it has less shrink and therefore higher margins for supermarkets. This is a greenhouse farm we built for about $2.5 million in the Philadelphia area in 2012. It's selling at our clients A&P Superfresh and McCaffrey's on an exclusive basis. It uses 10 times less water, 7 times less land than field agriculture. It is using less fossil fuels and less greenhouse gas emissions than the produce it's displacing. It's got zero agricultural runoff. We recycle the water. The lettuces and tomatoes are terrific because we've eliminated thousands of food miles. But it's even more terrific when our clients tell us, the supermarkets tell us, how much sweeter and delicious our grape tomatoes are than the grape tomatoes they've replaced. When their customers rave about how much dramatically better the baby kale, the arugula, and the spring mix is relative to their long-distance cousins, which makes sense, of course. We've got about $70 million in backlog. That's the sum of our long-term contracts. We'll soon be over $100 million. We're rolling out a prototype farm that's about $3 million in annual revenue with post-debt service cash flow margins of about 30%. We've got about 7 additional projects in development right now. We've got techniques for signing clients quickly, for getting cities to approve our drawings quickly. St. Louis just approved our plans in 7 days. We have a cookie-cutter greenhouse design. Our model is bringing to supermarkets incredibly fresh, flavorful, and healthy produce on a structurally lower cost basis in a way that's better for the environment, that's profitable, and that scales. BrightFarms is exploiting an arbitrage opportunity. We're replacing a long and complex supply chain with a system that brings us fantastic tomatoes and a better environment for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You guys are doing a great job adhering to the clock, I have to say. Samir, let's start with you. Questions for Paul?
You just walk me through the economics. What's it cost you per pound of tomatoes? How much does the grocery store pay for it? And how much do they charge their customers?
So I'm going to answer in the opposite direction of the way the question was phrased. We're not looking to have a niche product for rich people. This isn't just for fancy stores and fancy customers. So we're going at the mainstream market. We're essentially selling wholesale at about the same price that supermarkets are already buying. And they're selling retail at about what they're displacing on the shelves, which are organic mainstream products, let's say, right? Our OpEx is actually born, and this is a little bit complex, but your question was a smart one. Our OpEx is born by a local farming partner that works for us on a contractual basis and that we manage, and the USDA puts up the working capital, and we literally split every dollar 50% with the local farmer. So our operating profits are always 50%, essentially.
Dhiraj?
You've lost a lot of weight. Must be all that locally sourced lettuce.
I'm one of the 1% this guy was talking about. It's mostly plant-based diet now.
Great idea. I think I see an even bigger opportunity for an MPA for whole locally sourced medical herbs out there.
Yeah. not for us. Those herbs store and they ship cheaply. There's not an arbitrage opportunity to eliminate the long distance.
The problem is he'd gain all his weight back.
Yeah. Very good.
Great. Let's give it up for Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next up, we have Steve Miller, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing for SurePure. Oh. Steve, come on up. I'm still a little bit upset that I didn't get the Rolling Stones joke, by the way. Anyway, wow.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you what we think is the future of liquid purification. I wonder if you've thought at all about the amount of energy that you're consuming when you sip your favorite beverage. How much energy has gone into purifying the liquid, the milk, whatever that you're sipping. Well, some calculations suggest that in the US alone, the energy consumed by pasteurization of fluid milk could power over 1 million US homes per year. And that's before you add in beer, soft drinks, fruit juice, and the like. We have a technology that can save upwards of 90% of that energy. And we do it by replacing thermal pasteurization with the power of light, and in particular, ultraviolet C light. Now, the beauty of ultraviolet light is that when you have pathogens or microbes or bacteria in a liquid, it acts directly on that pathogen. It leaves the protein, the minerals, the nutrients completely intact, unlike pasteurization, which has a very deleterious effect on those other constituents. And the other thing about it, despite being benign, it's really effective. It's effectively like neutering a dog. It doesn't explode the bug as thermal pasteurization does. It literally works in the DNA and stops it being able to replicate. So it's a bit like a dog. It has a happy, short life, but it can't reproduce. Net, you get a perfectly clean, safe fluid at the end. The downside of ultraviolet light is that if it's not an absolutely perfectly clear liquid, the penetrability drops dramatically. In fact, when it comes to milk, you only get a penetration of 0.03 of an inch into the fluid. So up till now, ultraviolet light has never been used for any turbid or opaque liquid. Up till now, that is. And now the change is that funny little gadget that looks like a bazooka and took me a real mission to get through customs, I might add, in the States. We call it the turbulator, and the secret behind it is literally turbulation. The difference to our system, from our system to any other system is in the turbulent chambers. It creates pressure and turbulence such that the liquid is tumbled over the light. The holy grail thus far has been trying to get the light to the liquid. We turn it on its head. We come from Africa. We kind of do things backwards most of the time, I suppose. So we actually took the liquid to the light. So that pathogen has to get exposed to the light. It has to be inactivated. And because we don't just have one, we have many in series. If I don't get the little bugger on the first one, I'll get him on the 3rd or the 10th or the 20th pass. So we get him every time. The joy of the system is that you can scale it. So it's just a case of how many of those you need to be able to purify the liquid. So there's an example on the top of a rural pasteurization system in India, out in the sticks. You can scale that up to SAB Miller's brewing plant, or a very different and unique multi-level fruit juice with no pasteurization, no preservatives, just by adding more of these identical turbulators. I guess the big part for us, though, is that you can process so many different kinds of liquids. So we're helping people take their processed water, clean it, use it, reuse it. We're using this on sugar syrups with big soft drink and brewing companies, taking away the heat that's used in pasteurization and avoiding the carcinogenic impact of heat. Liquid egg, which is a very difficult one too. If you over-pasteurize liquid egg, you get liquid scrambled egg. And then the big one for us is final products. So soft drinks, fruit juice, wine. In fact, you can see this wine here, absolutely sulfur-free, 0 sulfur, and it's palatable, believe it or not. Oops. Yeah. In a nutshell, this technology is greener than what it replaces. It saves our producers money from day one. It offers the consumer the offer of better, healthier, more nutritious products, and it's safe and approved. And we just are really grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you about this technology. If you're in the processing industry, please come and have a yell. And if you've got money, you can also come and chat. Thank you very much.
Under the clock, under the clock. Samir, let's start with you. A lot of food-related ideas, by the way. Let's go.
Yeah, first, someone looking like me and Dhiraj probably wouldn't make it through customs with that thing. So yeah.
Very true.
I changed my name to Steve Miller by default before.
Yeah, I've stopped wearing belts now. The question I had for you was, so as opposed to pasteurization, the bacteria remains. It's just been neutered. And what do you think, even if it's safe and FDA approved, what's the public perception going to be of that?
Well, it remains in pasteurization as well, but what happens in pasteurization is that the cell wall is literally exploded, and that pathogenic material is inside the liquid. With our system, the bug dies, and it's just there and it's inert. So it's identical to pasteurization in that regard. There's no difference.
Okay, great.
Dhiraj?
What are the economics of this compared to traditional pasteurization?
In dairy, for instance, this uses 7% of the energy that a pasteurizer would use. And then in brewing, it also replaces about 25% of the water. So most of the world's biggest beers are adjunct brews. That means that you get a source of energy for the yeast that comes from, in Budweiser's case, rice. In many beers around the world, from maize. What you can do with this technology is use dextrose sugar syrup instead of having to brew that. So all the energy that would have gone into that brew, all the water that would have been used to create steam and so on, can just go straight into another source. So 25% more capacity from your current brewing plant, or a cheaper beer, and more energy savings as well.
How long did it take you to come up with the name The Turbulator?
Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
That's a great name. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you
Round
very
of
much.
applause for Steve. And last but not least, we'd like to welcome to the stage Andy Ruben, the co-founder of Yerdle. Come on up, Andy.
Good morning. where the turbulator is going to create much better microbrews, which is awesome. I've spent most of my career as an executive at Walmart, but I'm proud to be here this morning in these very bright lights, talking about a new way to shop, to change the way we shop through sharing. And I want to start with a question. If you could raise your hand if you own a tent. Just raise your hand if you own a tent. Look around. OK, keep your hands up if you're camping tonight. We have a lot of things.
We've got a camper.
We've got one. We have one camper. We have a lot of things. And the odds are that somebody who's a friend of somebody in this room is looking for a tent right now. In fact, 80% of the items in our homes are used less than once a month, which is not only a game changer, better use of these things, it's not only a game changer for sustainability, it's a huge business opportunity. And that's the idea behind Yerdle. Yerdle makes it easy to share the items that we have with our friends. John Donahoe was up here on Monday about eBay, which was great and fantastic. The beauty of Yerdle when you share with your friends is, first, the items are free because your friends are sharing them with you. And it's amazingly, it's very gratifying to be able to pass an item along, hand an item off, or get an item from a friend. So here's the way this works. You post an item that you're not using, you're done with. Your friends can then search that item or browse, and Yerdle helps with the movement. It could be the meetup with the person, or it could be shipping. This whole space is part of the sharing economy or collaborative consumption. Airbnb is one of the best examples. Airbnb allows you to rent out a room you have to somebody staying in your neighborhood. Airbnb in the last few months has become the largest hotel chain in the world. And products are the untapped well of this sharing economy. 25% of the items that we buy every year exist in our social networks. It's a $200 billion market opportunity. Yerdle's a marketplace, so we start with the ability to share items free with your friends, but you can also buy items outside of that network, and Yerdle takes a small commission. And that small slice of what our members save makes Yerdle an incredibly healthy business. The part, though, that I love is the environmental opportunity. There are 71 pounds of waste for every 1 pound of new item that we buy, 71 pounds, upstream in the supply chain. And this doesn't just reduce that number, it eliminates it. Now, we launched Yerdle the day after Thanksgiving, which I believe is a much better day for sharing than standing in line for a $25 television. We've had 15,000 members join in the last 6 months. In the last 7 days, we had 5,100 items posted or wanted. And we're growing at 25% a month. But it's not just members who are finding value in this. One of the exciting spaces that we're working into is brands who are figuring out through Yerdle ways to tap into this sharing economy for things. Where's Rick Ridgway? I saw this morning. Rick gave an amazing presentation yesterday on Patagonia. And Yerdle is phenomenally excited to be partnering with Patagonia for back to school. And we'll be encouraging moms to reuse items that their kids have outgrown that are sitting in the closet right now. And when a mom shares that item, when she gives it to a friend network, she is promoting generosity and gratitude and love for the brand with her friends and their friends. And that's a beautiful thing. Yerdle launched a national partnership with NBC Universal and their brands just last week, where they were encouraging through Yerdle their brands, fans of their brands to share. The Weather Channel encouraged their fans to share disaster preparedness items. Even Jimmy Fallon on Late Night encouraged his fans to get to know each other better by sharing items. Here's the exciting part about having this conversation right now. In the context of the last few days, this is an idea that actually has scale to change the conversation that we're talking about. It goes beyond just making things better. Many of us have worked together when we launched sustainability at Walmart, and that's been amazing, both because the idea is right and because it was a big business opportunity and it scaled. And the opportunity with Yerdle is the next step, and it's bigger. And it goes beyond making the items that we produce better. It goes to the next step with technology of better using the items we have. So join me in changing the way we shop by sharing.
Thank you, Andy. Dhiraj, let's start with you this time.
So I love the idea and I love the name. The question I have for you is, what's the craziest item someone shared on Yerdle?
Gosh. Mark, wherever Mark is, I apologize. The craziest item we've had has actually been a, thank you for that question. You'll see why in a minute. The craziest item has been a vibrator. It was brand new in the package. Once you remember what that item is, you can't get it out of your head, and you can't answer any differently. So now this was brand new in the package.
Oh my God, I think this is a moment of Brainstorm Green. Okay.
Yes. Let's leave it at that. The last tidbit is we actually found out there was massive interest in this item, and it was, we actually found out that the manufacturer of the items, in this case Jimmy Jane, had had someone put it on Yerdle for the span of getting the message out there, which I think just shows how the world and consumer mindset is changing and the opportunities for brands in the space. Thank you, kind of, for that question. So,
collaborative consumption may have just jumped the shark. Anyway.
Maybe.
Samir, a question for Andy.
Again, you got to top that one now.
I'm still shell-shocked by that answer. So you said that friends can share for free, but if you enable beyond friends, then you make a little bit of money on that. Mm-hmm. How do people define friends, and how do you keep people from kind of cheating the system there?
Yeah, this is, so the idea, this is an existing behavior. It's a behavior that's existed for millennia where if I've got a friend who comes over that needs a keyboard and I have one, I love the ability to hand that to somebody to borrow. We have, with 6 months, we've had no problem with people gaming the system. You log in through Facebook, LinkedIn, some social network that today exists. And the ability to match to people in that way provides that space of trust. And the breadth of those relationships today provides sufficient liquidity to get those items out of our closets and garages. And that's the big step. Not the ability to do this, but the motivation and desire to make better use of the things that have already been produced.
So just to be clear, the revenue stream then for you is, it comes only when users share outside of their friend network.
Yep. That is the first revenue stream. They're tantalizing. We're talking about a $200 billion product market. There are tantalizing other ways that we will explore, but that is our first revenue, is paid transactions outside your friend network.
Okay, and is there any significance to the name?
We need, Yurtle, the name Yurtle is made up, and our belief is that the word sharing has come to mean where I had dinner last night or the card that I just got. And we need more words. And our belief is we need more words for the act of sharing, the act of getting something from someone who cares about you or handing something to someone you care about.
Great. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
By the way, if anybody, speaking of the excess amount of stuff that we have, there is a wonderful bit by George Carlin. If you just Google George Carlin and stuff, it's worth watching. It's hilarious. Anyway, now it's time to vote. So everybody in the audience, we'd like you to think long and hard, think about which companies you think will be the most successful, and text the code that's shown on the screen. I think we've got each of the startups is listed there, so I don't need to read the numbers. But the number you're going to text to is 22333. So we'd like everybody to vote. And we're actually going to get the results in just a few minutes. You guys don't get to vote. Place your votes, place your bets. Going to wait a couple more minutes here. 64 votes. Entrepreneurs are patiently waiting. And the winner is PK Clean. Let's give a round of applause to our winner, Priyanka. Priyanka, you can come on up. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. And
Congratulations.
Judges will
Thanks.
congratulate you. And let's please give a round of applause to all of our entrepreneurs and to our judges for a great session. Thanks.
Thank you.